Teo Soleymani, what's going on? Welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. It's been a while, but I'm happy to be back and hopefully shed some insight on like fundamentals on skin health, skin wellness, and just overall health and wellness.
I love it. Well, you're the GOAT. You
I don't know about that,
are the best in the game when it comes to skin health.
Thanks.
And we were just reflecting, just so listeners get a sense. I mean, there are very few books written for the lay public on the topic of skin health. So that's something that to me is like very perplexing. It's a big paradox because skin is one of our largest organs, right?
It's the largest organ.
The largest organ.
And the first organ you see.
And the first organ you see.
The eyes, but yeah.
There you go. So it's so crucially important. And yet I feel like it's an underserved topic.
Yeah. I think so. I've written a lot of books and book chapters in the medical space and the surgical space. And then when you come to figure out what the average person can understand about skin, there isn't anything out there. Now, like that scratched my head. So my team and I decided to put together like a simple protocols book that I originally wrote for my patients and my practice. And I'm like, why don't we make this available to everyone? So we're giving it out for free. There's a hardcover version of it called Skin Protocols, but there's an ebook that's available completely for free for anybody who's interested. You can just shoot me a message and we'll send you the digital copy. It's basically how to take care of your skin, the fundamentals of skin and sun, how to understand the single most important thing of skin aging, which is sun exposure, or the single most controllable thing. And then like we demystify a lot of myths, and then how to handle simple things like retinoids, how you use them. There's a chart on how to apply, and basics. It's not meant to be a medical textbook. It's meant to be an introduction to how do I make my skin look a little better.
It's great.
Yeah.
Do you personally feel pressure to have pristine looking skin at all times? Sort of like when you go see a dentist for the first time, you're checking out their teeth.
Yeah. Yes and no. I don't think about it until I have a breakout and I'm like, I can't do this. So they're going to judge me. Fortunately, part of it is genetics. So I get lucky and people are like, what do you do for your skin? And I'm like, I'm a surgeon most of the days. I don't do much. I do the fundamentals. I wash, I wear my retinoid, and if I'm out in the sun, I'll do some sort of sun protection. But other than that, I don't do much.
Dude, your Instagram is crazy. Yeah. I mean, sometimes I have to like prepare myself for what I'm about to see because you do you're doing like hardcore surgeries.
Appreciate that. Yeah, I have a very unique practice. My fellowship training was both in oncology, dermatologic oncology, as well as facial plastic and reconstructive surgery. My specific niche practice now is mostly dealing with complex head and neck cancers and reconstruction.
Wow.
It's what I did as a professor at UCLA for many years, and then I left to start my practice. And I kind of bridge the gap between dermatology and head and neck oncology, and it's a small niche, but it's a huge demand. Skin cancer is the most common cancer worldwide. This month, ironically, is a very important month. May is Skin Cancer Awareness Month. 6 million cases a year in the U.S. alone. There's a death every 23 minutes in the U.S. alone from skin cancer.
Wow.
People don't think about it until it's a problem, and it affects all ages of life. In fact, the second most common killer in young women is skin cancer. So I dedicated my professional career and life to that. But obviously, having background in dermatology, most people don't ask me, hey, what do you do for this tumor? They say, hey, how do I make my skin look a little better? Or how do I stop these breakouts? So I'm like, okay, I'll do both. I'll try my best to bridge the gap.
I love it. I read a headline that I didn't vet the source of what the headline was claiming, but is it true that skin cancer is on the rise?
Yeah. So we're in a weird paradox, right? Because this is the most sun protected population ever in the United States. Yet the incidence of skin cancer in young adults, these are sun naive, we call them chronically sun naive patients, has been increasing year on year. Obviously, there's an issue with the boomer population as they aged. They grew up in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, what have you. We didn't have great sun protective measures. We didn't also understand the consequences of long-term unprotected sun. So we expect that population to show more skin cancers as their immune system gets weaker. And we'll touch on that in a little bit. But I can't explain the 18-year-olds, the 19-year-olds, the 20-year-olds, the incidence of melanoma not decreasing, the incidence of basal cell and squamous cell increasing in these populations. So it's not all skin, or it's not all sun. I think there's environmental factors we haven't taken into consideration. There must be something about the environment and the immune system that we're missing. And then there's other factors that are totally not sun-related. I see a lot of young patients with HPV that's a cause of their skin cancer. And it's usually in areas that are not, sun exposed, not on the face, not on the hands, not on the arms. It's usually in the genital area. So there's a lot of factors to take into consideration. Why I bring this up, I've somehow become the dermatologist because I feel people can enjoy the sun. They can enjoy it safely. I don't think the sun is the culprit for all skin cancers at all. And I don't think sun avoidance is a good thing. Just like too much of any good thing can be a bad thing. Sure, chronic blistering sunburns are a problem. I think if you're constantly getting burned, it's a problem. But if you're also avoiding the sun completely for fear of skin cancer, that can be a problem that's undervalued and not spoken about. Drink 8 glasses of water and you'll feel hydrated. Drink 8 gallons and you'll end up in the hospital. So same concept with the sun.
Yeah, it's like a U-shaped curve.
Yeah. You find that balance, I would say a U-shaped curve.
Yeah, I mean, well, you often see people from decades past in their 30s. Like you'll see your average a photo, will circulate online of your average 35-year-old in the 70s. I'm thinking of like Sean Connery, James Bond or something. And they look dramatically older
100%.
than a 35-year-old today.
Yeah.
So the question that always arises for me, like, is it that they were getting they were unaware of the pro-aging effects of chronic, unprotected sun exposure? Or was it also the fact that they were people tended to smoke more back then, people tended to drink more alcohol, there was less awareness about the harms of alcohol consumption, the diets were crappier?
Totally. So I want to make a very clear distinction. I think sun and its association with skin cancer is not the same as sun and its association with aging. So sun exposure and aging is very linear. It's like the simplest way I can describe it is, a grape, if you put in the sun, will turn into a raisin over time, or leather, if you leave outside, will start to wrinkle and break down. That's very predictable. So if you are worried about aging or premature aging, then sun avoidance is much more expected and will save you. In the skin cancer world, totally different ballgame. But I think there's a few things. Definitely, sun protection is an important factor. I think, in the years where we didn't understand the consequences, people were sunbathing all the time. Baby oil was a common phenomenon, still is in a lot of parts of the world. I have patients who used to mix baby oil and iodine to get that tan. I've had patients who used to use butter, who used Coca-Cola or Pepsi to get the bronze color. I even had a patient swear they used to spray WD-40 on them and lay out in the sun. I kid you not. I wish I could make this stuff up. But there's definitely that component. I think there's an aesthetic component that's different. Mustaches were popular in the 80s that aren't that popular now. So automatically we get that aged look. We look like our dad if I have a mustache. But for sure, cigarette smoking, that's a huge problem. Alcohol, we didn't understand health, wellness as well as we do now. I do think, though, that people who avoid the sun tremendously also don't look healthy. There's several famous wellness people on social media that you can tell who enjoys the sun and who doesn't. And the ones that are really sun avoidant also don't look healthy. There's a reason why people in the hospital look ghastly. And my colleagues on the East Coast tend to be very, very sun protected. And we joke. I'm like, hey, you don't really look that healthy, man. Get a little bit of sun. And we say it tongue in cheek, but there's some truth to that because people look and feel better when they have a little bit of natural sunlight.
And correct me if I'm wrong, their sun exposure is the exposure to certain, I guess, wavelengths of light can be a treatment for certain skin conditions.
100%. So that's another paradox that we don't talk about in dermatology. In my practice, we have narrowband UVB therapy. We're the only practice in the community that has it. We use UVB, and we used to use UVA, still use UVA, to treat a myriad of conditions: psoriasis, eczema, morphea, vitiligo, chronic itch. It's incredibly effective without the consequences of oral or injectable medicines.
Wow.
So it's been around since antiquity. They used to use day sunlight as a form factor before we realized, okay, it's this wavelength of light that does this to the skin, or it's this wavelength of light. But every week we have dozens of patients that are getting phototherapy, UVB phototherapy. The difference is the controlled setting, we control the wavelength. So there is not a broad spectrum of UV. UVA tends to be the one that's a little bit more implicated in premature aging and some melanomas. UVC is highly mutagenic. We don't get too much UVC here, but we do get it in altitude. And then with sunlight, there's also things like gamma rays and X-rays that you tend to get more in altitude, or if you're on a plane, that you really don't get at sea level or in controlled phototherapy sessions. Also, the dose of light we give is really calculated. So just like I said, too much of a good thing can be a bad thing. If you get the right dose, it can treat a certain skin disease. When you get too much of it, it becomes a problem. It's like you take, a Tylenol, your headache goes away. You take 18 of them, and we got a problem.
Wow. What are the skin conditions that have evidence in support of treating using like UVB?
The fundamental one is psoriasis.
Huh.
It's exceptionally effective, and it works when topicals like creams or lotions or ointments don't suffice. I have a lot of patients that clear completely with phototherapy for psoriasis. Eczema is another one. A lot of patients with eczema, phototherapy helps control their skin symptoms and their itch. Vitiligo, which is an autoimmune-mediated loss of skin color. The UV light is thought to modulate our skin's immune system. So it's actually immunomodulatory, helps control the autoimmune attack. Chronic itch. We have patients with a myriad of chronic itch. We actually use UV therapy in my practice and in dermatology practices across the United States to treat lymphoma. There's versions of lymphoma called CTCL, cutaneous T-cell lymphoma, that we actually eradicate the cancer with UV light. So I don't want people to fear UV. I just don't want them to burn all the time because you've got a problem, right? But a little bit of sun is great. And then, when we talk about sunlight and light in general, there's infrared, there's red wavelength, there's blue wavelength, there's UV. So that spectrum provides totally different things. Early morning sun, late afternoon sun tends to be more in the red spectrum. Very safe and effective. Helps you sleep, helps you wake up timely, helps control circadian rhythm, helps control cortisol levels. There's a lot of factors that light provides that is a good thing. But somehow in the last 20 years in dermatology, and I think I know why, it's become if you go out in the sun, you're going to die, and you did it to yourself. And I think it's nonsense. I think there's a lot of industry influence in this. The beauty industry in the United States is almost $700 billion, just the topical skincare industry. And, you got to sell a sunscreen, and you got to sell a makeup that has a sunscreen. If people aren't fearing the sun, they're not going to wear it. So I think there's some component to that. Now, I'm not saying everybody should go out in the sun, they'll be fine. There are problems. We've said this 100 times, but I don't think people should fear the sun. I think blanket statements in medicine always create a problem. Everything is not black or white.
Amen. The dose makes the poison.
100%.
And that dose is going to be different person to person, correct?
Yeah. For example, I can tolerate an hour in midday sun at the beach without my skin turning red. That is my MED, my minimal erythema dose. So I know if I'm going to be out there longer than that, I should do something about it. But if I'm going to be out for 20 or 30 minutes and I don't photoprotect, I'll be fine. Now, am I worried about aging? That I'll be maybe a little bit more strict as to how much UV I get. But your skin, for example, may tolerate 20 minutes of midday sun at the beach. So if you're going to be out for half an hour, you should do something about it. You should do some form of photoprotection. But yeah, I think dermatology has become ridiculous in saying, oh, you have to protect from the sun. You can't go out in the sun. If you ever had sun in your life, that's the cause of skin cancer. Another thing that I think is important for me as a skin cancer surgeon, I see some of the worst cases in the United States. I mean, you mentioned my social media, and we post maybe a fraction of the cases we do, but I operate on 50 patients a week. We see in my practice up to 200 patients a day. And I see some of the most life-threatening tumors. And the one thing I hate, which happens in my specialty, and it's probably the only specialty that we still do this in medicine, is patients are guilted into feeling they were the cause of their cancer. They say, oh, remember that the sunburn you got in your teens or 20s, it's catching up now. That's bullshit. That does not occur. We know we get new skin every 28 days. So the fact to think that we are collecting mutations that consist and persist for 30, 40 years is nonsense. There's a few things I'm against. I don't like guilting patients. The last time we did this was in the 80s with smoking. We said, okay, if you're smoking a pack a day and you got lung cancer that's smoking related, it's your fault. That's kind of phased out. And ironically, the number one cause of cancer death now is lung cancer. And in women, the number one type of lung cancer is in non-smoking women. So we've stopped guilting patients into thinking their lung cancer was their fault. These are adenocarcinomas of the lung. Smoking-related lung cancer isn't even the top killer in lung. So that's number one. I hate guilting patients, not their fault. In the rare exception, sure, I have a patient who loves to tan. They say they're never going to stop. They're in artificial tanning beds. Okay, maybe they did it to themselves. But the 27-year-old that I had that passed away from metastatic melanoma, it's a shame for our specialty to say they did this to themselves because they got a tan when they were 14.
And as you said, like a lot of people who develop skin cancer, I mean, they will often get it in sun-naive parts of their bodies.
Yeah, there's a good portion that will get it in sun-naive areas. Still the vast majority is on the head and neck. That's because there's a lot more UV mutation and environmental insults that people collect. But number one, I don't think guilting patients is the right thing. And number two, a thing that nobody talks about is the implication of our immune system in the ability to detect and fight cancer. And this is not just in dermatology, this is in everything. In fact, the Nobel Prize was given in 2018 for the medicines that unleashes our immune system to fight cancer. So skin cancer and cancer in general is a problem of adulthood. And it's a problem of adulthood because our immune system gets weaker as we age, which is why things pop up in 60s, 70s that they didn't in their 20s. Nobody says, hey, watch out for immune system. Make sure your immune system is optimized. They say, wear sunscreen. Well, that's a little bit of nonsense. I mean, I don't want to say it's nonsense, but it's not the whole picture. So I hate guilting patients, and I think there's a lot more in the sun world that we're not talking about. I think sunlight is fine. I think sunlight can be safe and effective, but modulating your immune system, optimizing your health, play an important undervalued role in skin health, cancer development, cancer health, and just overall well-being.
So true. So supporting our immune systems, 100%. You would say, is a big part of the pie.
Huge, which is why patients who have immune deficiencies, whether it's from medications, whether it's certain autoimmune illnesses, whether they are transplant recipients or they have illnesses that make them immunosuppressed, have a 65,000% increase in skin cancer incidence, regardless of whether they're outside or not.
Wow.
In fact, in the early transplant phases, and we're getting really scientific here, in the 90s, the number one cause of death in transplant patients, heart, lung, kidney, that was not related to their transplant failing was metastatic skin cancer.
Damn.
So it's more than just, hey, you didn't wear sunscreen when you were a teenager at the pool, it's your fault. There's so much we're just understanding. And now,
well, explain why that is, because maybe it's not obvious to lay listeners, but when you become the recipient of a transplant organ, you have to take immunosuppressing drugs, right?
Yeah. So you've received an organ from somebody else, and it's a life-saving miracle. The problem is that organ contains antigens or little markers that were from the other person. So your body recognizes that as foreign. And if you leave it alone, your immune system will try to fight it off. So we give patients medication that suppresses or holds back their immune system just enough so they don't fight that gifted organ. Well, the problem with that is you put the brakes on your immune surveillance, which is our body's ability to find and fight things that shouldn't be there. And that's where a lot of cancer develops.
Damn. But it also paves a path toward like nutritional means of supporting your immune system via nutrient adequacy,
100%,
metabolic health,
100%,
all the things that we talk about ad nauseum on the show.
Yeah, and we're only now finding and I'm going to go off on a tangent here, but the environment, we talk about the environment. The environment doesn't necessarily have to be like the air. It doesn't necessarily have to mean you're living in polluted LA congested smoke-filled air. It's the environment in which your body is exposed to. So it could be the foods you're eating. It could be the lifestyle you live, the way you live. We see diet as a huge implicator in skin health in ways people didn't recognize before. But we also see diet playing a role in cancers that we didn't see before. Colon cancer, stage 4 metastatic colon cancer is an epidemic in the United States right now. It's the fastest rising cancer in adults under 50. Colon cancer used to be a thing of you ate red meat, you smoked, you got colon cancer at 65. That was the medical textbook. Now patients 30s, 40s, 20s. I mean, there's celebrities, the actor from Dawson's Creek, so
James
many,
Vanderbeek, yeah.
So
Rest
many
in
young
peace.
patients. So we're scratching our heads. We're saying, well, what is it? And there's an unspoken reality. It's the stuff you're putting in that's changing your body's ability to recognize bad versus good, and it's changing your immune system's ability to fight things.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it probably also strongly correlates with ultra-processed food consumption.
100%.
42% of us are now obese. Metabolic health is something that only the minority can claim to possess. Like it's a widespread problem. So it's like it's not shocking to me that we'd see increasing rates of all these other downstream conditions.
Yeah, you bring up obesity, metabolic syndrome. So the quintessential skin disease, for example, is psoriasis. Millions of people in the U.S. have psoriasis. It's this red scaly patch that occurs on our body. And over the last 20 years, we've come to recognize that psoriasis not only is a disease of the skin, but it's actually a biologic marker of immune dysregulation. And it is a marker of metabolic syndrome in a lot of adults. And in fact, if you lose weight, if you change your diet to an anti-inflammatory diet, your psoriasis gets better without medication. Now, we never could have fathomed this 20 years ago. We were saying, take this pill, take this cream, we'll figure out a way to calm it down. Eczema, you can control, albeit it's not the majority, but it's a significant minority improvement in your eczema based on the diet that you have, the anti-inflammatory diet, controlling ultra-processed foods, controlling the burden of sugar and fat will make your skin look better. So there's anecdote in like, hey, you're eating healthy, you look better, you're feeling better, but now you're finding hard science proving that this is the reason why.
Oh, it's so true.
Yeah, it's awesome, man.
You know that I'm a big fan of astaxanthin, and I know that you are too, which
absolutely.
is awesome. But I don't like to pat myself on the back, but I've been like a longtime champion of plant pigments, and not just plant pigments, but marine pigments like astaxanthin, but carotenoids like lutein and zeaxanthin and beta carotene and vitamin E, fat-soluble antioxidants like vitamin E. I just feel so strongly that like if you're not eating a nutrient-rich diet that's inclusive of animal source foods and whole plants, you're leaving a lot on the table when it comes to your body's ability, your skin's ability to protect itself.
1,000%. There's a reason why the rainbow diet from the 80s and 90s actually held some truth. Is you're actually finding the compounds that represent that color that have a biologic behavior. Astaxanthin, for some reason, in the skincare world is not very recognized. Unlike the wellness, longevity, anti-aging, and the basic science world really recognizes the potency of this antioxidant, which is remarkable. For the people who don't know, it's the compound, the carotenoid, that gives shrimp their color, that give flamingos their color, that give salmon sometimes their color, and it's one of the most potent free radical scavengers that you can have, and it's widely available in just your diet. Everybody says, I'm a first generation here, but in my parents, my grandparents always say food is medicine, and now you're like, they're right. you do this full circle. You go to college, you go to med school, you ignore what they're saying, you get really deep in the science, and then you let everything boil down, and you're like, there's some truth to what they were saying. They know what they're talking about.
Dude, amen. I got to connect you with my friend Dave Wadamole, who is the founder. He's an astaxanthin scientist essentially, and I know you're a big fan. You've got astaxanthin in sun powder. But yeah, we've done a number of episodes on the show in the past about astaxanthin and its unique molecular structure that allows it to protect cells from the inside out. And the amount of data on it, it's like not just like a dozen or so studies. There's like hundreds of studies
Yeah,
on astaxanthin.
we're actually seeing in the skin world that it has not only an objective improvement in the aesthetic outcome of your skin, so your skin looks better over time if you have an increased source of astaxanthin because it protects from free radical injury from the environment, UV oxidation, et cetera. But we're actually seeing signals of cancer reduction in the skin because of the ability to fight off damage that would otherwise go unchecked. It's one of the reasons you bring up sun powder. Sun powder we created as a supplement, as a way to protect patients from excess UV and from DNA mutations that can occur from a variety of things. There really isn't a supplement in the skin space until we created it. And one of the key ingredients is exactly that, is astaxanthin. Everybody was in the derm space was like, why did you put this in there? I'm like, just go to PubMed and look up all the benefits that you can get from this. It's going to be a net positive. And now we're seeing that the published literature support it in the skin space. So it's kind of cool.
No, it's amazing. I think that a lot of these, like the more prominent personas in the health and wellness world, the biohacking space, in air quotes, if you want to call it that, like carnivores, I think, are leaving so much on the table by avoiding plants. And if you actually look at the way they look, none of them look like they're beating the aging game. Like
No,
they
of
don't.
course
Their
not.
skin
100%.
looks red, like inflamed.
Yeah.
And then you take like, others who are sun avoidant and they have this deathly pallor, which you described.
Yeah.
And it's like, there is some truth to, I don't want to say all things in moderation, because I think that that's sometimes used as an excuse to sell junk foods. Like you can consume sugar-sweetened beverages, for example, in moderation or what have you. It's like, so it's sort of become over the past couple of decades the mantra of, industry-funded dietetic philosophies. But I do think that there is something to be said for moderation. Like,
Look, I had a young kid, I want to say like 6 months ago, that was on a carnivore diet, and he came in, he had horrible xanthomas on his hands, which is when you have so much circulating fat in the blood that it spits out into the skin.
Oh my God.
We sent him for some blood work, and I mean, you could have looked at his blood and said it was grade A butter. It was horrible. This guy is ripe for a clotting event. So there's a lot of miscommunication with everything out there. Just like how I bring up the sun as an example, I think finding the balance of what works is important, but having a balance across everything in the diet spectrum is really important. Now, what is unique is your needs may be different than my needs, and your tolerances may be different than mine. And that's where the personalization of medicine and wellness and health come into play. Same way how I can tolerate a little bit more sun perhaps than you can, or I can't tolerate certain serums or creams, but you can. Same thing with the diet. My body personally does really well when I have a high animal protein source and a high fruit, medium vegetable source. I feel the best. I need the sugars from fruits. When I start to incorporate certain other foods, I don't feel as great. I can see it in my body. I can see it in my joint. I can feel it in my joints. That may be very different than you. My wife, for example, doesn't really like too much animal protein. She doesn't like a lot of red meat. She doesn't feel great with it, but she modulates her diet based on what works for her. But the key thing is it's not a blanket statement. In medicine, blanket statements suck. You can't say all animal protein sources are phenomenal and all vegetables are horrible, and you can't say all vegetables are phenomenal and you can't have any protein. It's just our bodies aren't meant to do that.
Exactly. And I think it's also important for people to, contextually, like, think about food as having the potential to impart both a direct benefit on skin health, but also an indirect benefit. Like, and both are valuable. Like the direct benefit might come from, okay, you're eating wild salmon for the astaxanthin, right? Which is going to have a direct benefit on your skin if you eat it consistently and you hit a high enough dose. But there's also an indirect benefit to prioritizing high protein foods, because it's going to help you via its satiety mechanisms,
100%.
help you achieve a better body composition, help you achieve better metabolic health,
100%. You'll lose a little bit of weight if it's, if you have room to lose or you're trying, and that will translate into better overall health and better skin health. And it's interesting. We're finding out, low fat diets used to be a big problem. Low-fat diets were like really popular in the 90s, 2000s. Everything had a version that was a low-fat or a non-fat. And the connection between the gut, the skin, and our immune system is just now being elucidated. I trained up at Stanford, and they were really forward-thinking in this space and recognizing, hey, there is this discussion in our body between the messaging signals that our gut microbiome releases, our immune system, and then our skin's health and our skin's microbiome. And they're talking, let's figure this out. So one of the biggest things that I hear every day in our practice is young, teenagers who come in with acne, and they're like, what can I do to clear up my acne aside from, medication, what have you? I heard that this food is bad. I heard that food is bad. And the most common thing I heard was dairy. Dairy is bad for acne, and it's actually not true. What we found in a great study that came out of Pennsylvania is non-fat dairy products make acne flare, whereas full-fat dairy products, non-processed dairy products, didn't. And when we looked into that, in the United States, a lot of times there are emulsifiers that are placed in non-fat dairy products to give the mouthfeel of full fat. And that emulsifier mimics sugar. It actually spikes insulin measurably. And that was the culprit that made cystic acne flare. So when you gave patients normal full-fat dairy products, their acne really didn't flare. So there's a lot that we're understanding about the diet and actually what works, what doesn't. But it goes back to your point of the less processed, probably the better.
Yeah. And also just to tease out something that you alluded to, it's not necessarily the exclusion of dairy fat that's causing the acne flare-up.
Exactly.
It's the additives that are basically put into the reduced fat or fat-free dairy alternatives that are, used maybe to enhance the mouthfeel or what have you.
Yeah. It's the emulsifiers, the gums to give that feel of full fat that people can palate more. That was the problem. So we're just now finding out like the connection between what we consume, what we're exposed to, how we live, and then our function as health. It's really cool.
Wow. What are the surest? Obviously you can as a clinician you can see somebody who's overweight, but like what are some obvious signs on the skin that might indicate that there is metabolic dysregulation occurring under the surface?
Yeah, the number one thing is a condition that causes like this velvety brown discoloration along the neck or the underarms. It has a not nice name. It's called acanthosis nigricans, and it's the name for skin changes that occur when you are insulin resistant. So we just now understand how much insulin, IGF-1, play a role in development of things in the skin. So as soon as you see that, that patient is at the minimum pre-diabetic if they're not diabetic. And you can make that diagnosis just by looking at their neck. People come in saying, hey, I can't clean this dirt off my neck. And they're usually a little bit overweight or they have a strong family history. And you're like, hey, you're on your way to problems. Other things, patients who have some acne and they tend to flare. And I see this in college kids a lot during finals time because their diet tanks as they're pulling all-nighters and they're stressed out and they're eating not well. You can see right away, inflammatory conditions tend to get worse when diet is worse. Psoriasis can tend to get worse. Eczema tends to get worse. But the first thing right away, like that's a sure shot, is this velvety change. And actually on that part, a lot of people come in with skin tags, a very common complaint. An abundance of these that grow pretty quickly tend to be a marker of, hey, you may be metabolically in a bad path, you may be insulin resistant, you may be pre-diabetic, so let's make sure we get this checked.
Wow. Are skin tags analogous to like polyps?
Kind of, yeah, they are. They're a good majority of them are genetic. A good majority of them are completely harmless. You inherited them from mom or dad. But the big shift, if you start to see a big shift where you didn't have them before and you're also associating that with some weight gain and lifestyle changes, that's the marker. Hey, it's not just genetic. Something else is driving the growth of things. And we talked about the growth, IGF-1, which is the downstream product of what happens when you eat too much sugar and you release too much insulin. IGF-1 is literally a growth factor. It's insulin-like growth factor 1. It makes things grow, and it makes things grow as a problem. A lot of tumors are driven by that. A lot of benign growths are driven by that. So it goes back to your overarching idea that if you control your diet, if you control how much ultra-processed sugar and fats that you're eating, you can decrease your cancer risk. You can improve your appearance. You can improve your overall well-being by just silencing the things that make things grow that shouldn't grow.
I love that you highlighted ultra processed fats because oftentimes sugar has taken such a beating over the past few decades. And hey, look, maybe I've played a role in that early on in my career. But I really do. I've changed my perspective, and I think that it's the added fats. And I'm not even talking about specific fat sources. I'm just talking about added fat.
Yeah.
I think has become a huge problem for people. Obviously, the added sugar is still a problem. I'm not, exonerating the fact that so many of us, we just consume crazy amounts of added sugar, children especially. But the added fats, I think, added fats and oils are a huge source of invisible calories today for people.
It's unbelievable.
The creams,
100%.
Yeah.
If you look at skin aside, let's just talk medicine wellness. If you look at the blue zones in areas in the world where longevity is admired, people are living 95 plus, and that's the median age in these blue zones. If you look at their diets, almost all of them have normal full fat dietary meals, ingredients. They're not non-fat. They're not low fat. They're not low sugar. But they're not added. They're Lugaverian farm to table type of diet. So they're eating full fat cheese. They're eating full fat meats. They're eating pastas. But there's a balance to all of that. Obviously, portion control is a big one. Movement, walking, not being sedentary, et cetera. But if it was truly a problem of only sugar, if it was truly a problem of fat itself, you would see this problem in the blue zones. You don't see it. It's the added processed shelf-stable stuff that's not biologic. It drives our body kind of berserk. It's not meant to be consumed. Now, if you have a Twinkie every once in a while, not the end of the world. I will not penalize you. Everybody's human. But if that's your breakfast, lunch, and dinner, we got a problem.
Yeah, no, and totally. And in these so-called blue zones or whatever, even outside of that, the blue zones with the trademark at the end of it, long-lived populations, they're eating home more often.
Yeah.
The average calorie, the average number of calories a restaurant meal in the United States contains is 1,200 calories, which is more than half of your average person's daily calorie needs. So in one meal, and that's not including beverages. Yeah. That's not including side dishes.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's
the main dish, 1,200 calories.
That's crazy.
It's wild. And most of those calories are coming from the oils, the oils that they're adding.
Oh, 100%. I mean, for a period of my time, I was very strict about how what I ate, what I didn't eat. And I calculated everything in college and whatnot, and just salad dressing. You cut 120 calories out by changing out the oil. It's this much oil. But that's crazy you say that, because I use a rule of thumb of calculating how many calories I need at baseline, and I just do 14 times the pounds of body fat or body muscle that I have. That's a rough estimate. So for example, if I'm 100 pounds of muscle, I'll need 1,400 calories for baseline living. It's a rule of thumb that I've learned along the way, which means that meal is probably the day's caloric baseline for somebody like my wife, who's a lot smaller than me, which is crazy because you have 2 more meals plus perhaps some snacks you're eating through the day.
Exactly.
And you wonder why the U.S. is morbidly obese.
Exactly.
And you're wondering why the GLP-1s are doing so well, man.
No,
crazy.
100%. It's not mysterious.
Yeah.
It's right there. What about chronically itchy skin? I want to ask you about this because I have an issue where often at night, the area around my upper ankles, just below my calves, get really itchy. And I'm itching them sometimes to the point where they start bleeding. It's just crazy.
Itch is crazy. Itch is this phenomenon that we still haven't conquered. And we've put people on the moon and we still can't figure out itch, which is unbelievable. I had a colleague at Stanford, an old faculty attending, who dedicated his entire lab to the study of itch. And itch is an undervalued disease. We've had patients who have tried to kill themselves from chronic, unrelenting itch. It can drive people crazy. Wow. It literally can drive people crazy. We're just now understanding itch is mostly nerve-driven, not so much skin. Skin is the secondary problem. But for the vast majority of people, it's either something related to the immune system in the skin. So think of hay fever, asthma, allergies, this umbrella where you're having histamine release. That's the majority of the itch problem in younger adults. You can think of like hives in being in this family. So something is triggering your body's immune system. As we get older, there are medications. So in the United States, people take the most medicines of anywhere else in the world. Usually the average older person that comes into my practice is on 13 different prescriptions.
Wow.
Polypharmacy is a problem. So itch tends to be a consequence of too many medications. And then the third, which isn't a problem in young adults, is this condition called pruritus of immunosenescence. As our immune system gets weaker, it's almost like a phantom noise that your body doesn't know kind of how to dial down. But itch drives people insane, especially when there's no rash.
Yeah.
The eczema used to be called the itch that rashed, not the rash that itched, because you would scratch it until you developed a rash. And that's because something in your skin's immune system is reacting to a trigger, usually from the environment.
Damn. It's crazy. Sometimes I get so itchy, like around the tops of my feet and like my calves, that like my nails aren't even sufficient. Like I have to like grab some kind of like rigid like object and just like scratch that.
So
it's like
this
wild.
is not medical advice for anybody that's listening, but usually around the ankles, especially if you have pets, you think about some sort of environmental trigger, and then a reason why that environmental trigger is getting in your skin, which is usually a barrier defect. So if your skin is really dry, or you had eczema as a young child, you have the genetics in which your skin microscopically, the weave is a little bit more open. So environmental triggers get in more than, for example, somebody who didn't have that. So the simplest way is just to try to seal that off with a good moisturizer. And if that doesn't work, then you use something to calm down the skin's immune system. Usually we use some sort of topical medication that's a prescription.
Wow. Yeah. So interesting. When it comes to topicals, what are like the, because we talked a lot about diet and diet's impact on skin.
Yeah.
I know the first time you were on the show, we talked about retinols.
Retinoids. We could talk about a lot of topicals. So I am a less is more dermatologist. I'm also a guy, so I tend not to be perfect with my skincare. That's just the fact of the matter. And, I operate every single day. So sometimes I'm waking up early and coming home late at night. So I am imperfect. I'm a human. But if you want the three key things that you need to do for your skin to look great, or the best that it can be without prescriptions, without spending a lot of money, you need some form of sun protection. And the most common version is sunscreen. We're going to go into sunscreens a little bit. Some form of retinoid at night, and we can talk about the difference between retinols and retinoids. And then a balanced life, meaning adequate sleep if you can, and an anti-inflammatory diet. Those three things, if you do those, that's like 90% of the cake you're building. And now we're talking about cake, which it shouldn't be. But everything else on top is the icing. Cake. Yeah, exactly. It's the icing, the sprinkles. There's vitamin C's, there's alpha hydroxy acids, there's beta hydroxy acids, there's eye patches, there's this cream, there's that cream, there's nighttime serums. All of that is kind of the finishing touches. But if you have to build your fundamentals. The most important thing to prevent aging and make your skin look good otherwise is something that mitigates too much UV or sun exposure. So I have a love-hate relationship with sunscreen, and everybody's probably going to ask why. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about sunscreen. I tend to like, if I'm going to use a sunscreen, I tend to like the mineral sunscreens over chemical sunscreens, and we'll go over the details if you want to. But I got a lot of slack for saying that from people who are industry tied, because the majority of the beauty industry tends to use chemical sunscreens for a variety of reasons. So if you're going to pick a sunscreen, I like mineral sunscreens. The problem with sunscreens in the US is more than 60% of patients don't apply enough. They don't reapply enough. They don't cover all the square inches of skin that you need to protect, which is one of the fundamental premises why we created sun powder. Is, people come in with skin cancers in areas that they forgot to wear sunscreen for their life, behind the ears, back of their necks. They covered their face, they forgot the sides of their neck. So it's an imperfect science, an imperfect tool, but if you use it correctly, it's great. I tend to like hats and shade and shelter and physical clothing better than sunscreen myself. It's impossible to burn if you're in the shade, but you can still burn through sunscreen, but you should use some form of sun protection. And I'm not saying don't wear sunscreen. This is my personal preference. Retinoids. Retinoids are, in dermatology, the holy grail of medicines. They are a form of a vitamin A derivative in the carotenoid family. So shout out carotenoids.
Yeah.
that basically increase how quickly your skin turns over. So we have new skin every 28 days. I don't know if people know that, but your skin is brand new every 28 days.
Wild.
And that's actually what the majority of dust is in the world, is our dead skin cells. So if you're vacuuming it out at your home and you see a lot of dust, 90% is dead skin.
That's crazy. Yeah. 90% of dust is dead skin.
Yeah. And the rest the rest is lint and linens and then mites that eat the dead skin. It's actually pretty gross. But if you put dust under a microscope, it's dead skin and mites and crazy stuff.
I had no idea.
So one of the ways you can improve its appearance is to speed up how quickly the skin can turn over, because it also stimulates the growth of new collagen and elastin. These are the proteins in our skin that makes our skin supple and soft. So the fundamental medicine in dermatology was tretinoin, which is a cream retinoid. And the pill version of that is a drug called isotretinoin or Accutane. So retinoids get a lot of blessings. Accutane gets a lot of slack for a whole myriad of reasons. But basically the cream is called tretinoin, and there's variants of that. There's adapalene, there's tazarotene, et cetera. But these are active medicines that will, when you apply to your skin, speed up how quickly your skin turns over, brings out new skin, and grows new collagen. So retinoids reduce your skin cancer risk, get rid of acne, get rid of fine lines and dyspigmentation, improve melasma. It's the only anti-aging medicine that's been proven over the last 50 years.
Wow. Well, here's a stupid question, or maybe not so stupid, but like, how is that not a pro-cancer agent then if it's speeding up like?
So it is. We use it. Oh, you mean how is it not a pro-cancer? Okay, because it controls differentiation. It gets rid of mutated cells. So it allows healthy stem cells to develop, and they mature appropriately. So it's not making everything grow. It speeds up the natural differentiation process of our skin.
Wow.
So it eradicates cumulative DNA damaged cells. And we actually use it to treat skin cancers. We actually use it to treat certain internal cancers. Then there's the whole world of retinols, and people confuse this. Retinol, retinoid, what's the difference? Because these drugs are very potent in their ability to affect the cell, there are cautions that you have to be aware of when you are using them. The number one thing is they can cause birth defects in a developing fetus. Now, the big problem is that with the oral versions, because the amount that you get is way higher than the creams, but in theory, the topical creams that you put on have the same consequence. So because of that, the FDA has made it a prescription drug, and it should be, rightfully so, because we don't want any consequences. The consequences are significant and severe. We're talking missing arm, missing legs type of birth defects, real problems. So because of that, they are controlled. They have been since the 80s. Well, because it makes people look better, the cosmeceutical and beauty industry is like, shit, this is a great molecule. How can I get this over the counter and into every cosmetic product in the world without the FDA saying, hey, stop? So they created what's called retinols, which are inactive prodrugs that require your body to have an enzyme to convert it to the active version. So if you go to Nordstrom's, Sephora, wherever, and you see retinols listed, those are actually inactive. They expect your body to have a conversion ability to turn it into the active drug. And every single person has a different concentration of enzyme and enzyme activity in their body. So some people use it and they peel and they have a very active response. I could put on over-the-counter retinols all day, nothing happens to my skin. So either I have really oily skin or I don't have much of a conversion ability. So retinols are the inactive version of retinoids, but they are still a great way to break into the retinoid world. You can test your skin's ability, then go ask your dermatologist for a retinoid. But that should be your nighttime regimen. Why I say nighttime is tretinoin specifically is photolabile. So if it gets a lot of sun, it becomes an inactive version. So you're just having a glorified moisturizer. Some of them are not. Adapalene, which is now over the counter, called Differin, that one is photostable, so you can use that. But that's my nighttime regimen. That's the single best thing I am relatively consistent with because it makes my acne go away. It shrinks my pores. I know it'll help reduce my skin cancer risk. It'll make me look younger. everybody should be on it. It should be in the water.
Wait, so great. Okay, so so you use do you use the prescription version? Or?
I do, and partly because I can tolerate a high potency medicine.
But for somebody first just dipping their toe into that arena.
You can start with an over-the-counter retinol, see if you have the ability to convert it. There's a bunch of different brands and companies. You can pick whichever one. It doesn't have to be expensive. That's another misconception in
Is there a specific like percentage or like potency that people should look for?
With the over-the-counter ones, because they are not an active drug, it's hard to get a good percentage, but over-the-counter ones have anywhere from 0.1, 0.05. Sometimes they have 1% if it's a retinol that's a prodrug that isn't very potent. But in the prescription space, there is 0.025, 0.05, 0.1. That tends to be in the tretinoin space. Adapalene, which is now over-the-counter, has 1% and 3%. But the percentages don't matter. I would say first start conservatively. If people want to try a tested retinoid, Differin, it's $19. Dirt cheap. It used to be a prescription for 15 years, and then so many people were using it, and its safety profile is so good that the FDA made it over the counter a few years ago. Wow. It's called Differin Gel. You start with a pea-sized amount, start once a week at night, and test your tolerance. If you use too much of a retinol, you'll peel, so you'll know like, I need to back off. But the goal is to get your skin to acclimate to it so that it turns over and it keeps your skin glowing.
Wow.
Yeah, it should be in the water. The true anti-aging drug is a retinoid.
A retinoid.
Yeah, you can biopsy the skin. We've done the studies since the 90s and 2000s. You can put somebody on a cream, and you will biopsy their skin and run the genetics on the skin that was done before they started and after. And biologically, the skin is in a younger state.
Damn.
Yeah, it's awesome. Why not? Everybody should be on it.
And safe to be used chronically, like for life?
Yeah, because it grows new collagen. It grows new elastin. All of these things require time. So the longer you use it, the better for your skin.
Damn, I want to try it.
Yeah, I'll send you some.
Yeah, so cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
So so sun protection, retinoid, and then just a good lifestyle.
Just a good lifestyle.
That's the three fundamental things. Now, every single person has something that they would like to improve in their skin space. Most people. So that if you're breaking out, if you have a lot of acne, then we address the acne. Well, what are things that we can do? We can either dry them out, reduce the inflammation, etc. Some people, their biggest concern is wrinkles and aging. So when you look at that, we can figure out, okay, what else do we add to the skin to mitigate that? So, for example, vitamin C serums, which are really popular, and I'm not the biggest fan of them for a variety of reasons, but vitamin C works as a topical antioxidant. So it helps prevent oxidative stress from the environment. We see a lot of people with some consequences of vitamin C, perioral dermatitis, that get these acne-like rashes. But if you don't have that, vitamin C is an excellent addition if aging is a problem, right? Some people have pigmentary issues, melasma, dyspigmentation. So there are certain forms of sunscreens and certain creams that we can give to combat that. But if you can just do sun protection and a retinoid and good diet and sleep, you're like better than 90%.
Is there any way to get rid of these like white dots that I get sometimes on my forearms?
Yeah,
I think probably just from like probably just from like, I don't know. I mean, this is the arm that would stick outside of the car window.
Yes.
It gets probably a disproportionate amount of sun exposure.
So that has a really fancy name called idiopathic guttate hypomelanosis, which is a fancy way of doctors saying, yeah, thanks. The doctor saying, we have no idea what causes this, but they're white spots that is probably from UV. And the theory is that the cells that produced your skin's color have been temporarily paralyzed from too much UV at a period of time they didn't like to tolerate.
Damn.
Yeah. Fancy name for idiopathic means in medicine, we have no idea.
We have no idea.
Guttate is like little raindrops or dewdrops. And then hypomelanosis just means light or not enough melanin. So descriptive term for we have no idea.
Is there a way to reverse it or no? I mean, I don't mind it.
We can't reverse it. We can reduce the likelihood of you getting more of them, and then we can soften the contrast. So that's something we can do. So to help blur if you tan more, the white will stand out more. So we do things to kind of soften that contrast. But the single greatest thing that you can do to help prevent that is some form of sun protection when your arm's out the window.
Yeah, just protect your damn skin.
Maybe put on a golf sleeve or something.
Yeah, you don't have any that I can perceive, but you also have more melanin than me.
I have a lot more melanin. Yeah, this is probably the fairest I am. And my dad's my dad's an Armenian. I'm ethnically Armenian. He looks at me. He thinks I'm sick because I'm pale. He's as tan as a leather belt, so he doesn't understand the space.
It's so funny.
Yeah.
What about beef tallow? Tallow is something that a
Yes.
lot of people are now putting on their skin. I actually enjoy using it as a lip balm. I don't really use it as, I guess, some of the products that I do have in my cosmetics whatever cabinet. I mean, I don't have an elaborate skincare routine either. But now you'll see like beef tallow touted as being a primary ingredient.
Totally. If you go on social media, you're going to find every single social media dermatologist talking shit about beef tallow. And I don't know why that is. I think maybe there's some industry sponsor to this behind the scenes. I don't know. But I think beef tallow can be a 9 out of 10 or it can be a -3 out of 10. And why the difference? So it's a very, very occlusive, meaning it clogs pores, form of a moisturizer. Think of Vaseline or Aquaphor. In patients who don't have inflammatory conditions or acne, I have a lot of older patients that I see for skin cancer, what have you. They use beef tallow. Their skin looks great and it keeps them moisturized because they are chronically dry for a variety of reasons. Although I'm a dermatologist, who am I to tell them that they're using beef tallow inappropriately? Their skin looks great. They have no issues with it. I've been seeing them for years, so it's a 9 out of 10 for them. I hate this, because people feel like they're physicians. They know better. I don't know any better. Your skin's telling me it's looking great. Who am I to tell you otherwise? Now, I have young patients who saw something on social media. They bought something. They're in the acne-prone age, and they've been using beef tallow, and all of a sudden they come in with a lot of acne. So in those populations, it's a problem because it does clog a lot of pores. It does make your acne worse. But if somebody like yourself, it keeps your lips moisturized, you like it, by all means, do it. It's a great occlusive form of barrier moisturization.
Well, I'm just going to speculate here, but beef tallow, I mean, if it comes from a grass-fed cow, I mean, we know that the fat of grass-fed cows are rich in antioxidant phytochemicals.
Yeah.
We know that the beef of grass-fed cows, beef fat in general is a source of vitamin E, not a major source of vitamin E, but the fat of a cow that's been 100% grass-fed has 3 times the vitamin E compared to grain-finished beef fat. And so, all that is to say there's a lot of antioxidant value potential in beef tallow.
So I have yet to hang my hat on the benefits or the growth factors that beef tallow can contain in its efficacy. So for sure, it contains vitamin A, vitamin E, some growth factors that are part of the stem cells of the fat that get processed. Whether that is clinically meaningful or significant, I don't know yet. And the way I would study that is, use beef tallow under one eyelid for 6 months, use another, moisturizer under the other eyelid, and then actually biopsy the skin and look at the genetics and epigenetic changes. That would be the most fundamental test that I can do to really prove that. That being said, it's not going to hurt. So if it's there, it's not going to be a detriment. So long as your source is legitimate, so long as you don't have contaminants, it is technically an animal product. So if it's not processed appropriately and not sterilized, you can run into some problems, which is why I don't actively advocate for it, because there's a lot of backyard beef tallow makers, and then you run into infections, zoonotic organisms, not sterile products, and people are using it all over their body. But if it's a good source, it's a clean product, why not? If you're not having any problems with it, by all means, use it. It's great.
Do we know how similar or dissimilar it might be to, what is the name of the oil we naturally produce on our skin?
Sebum.
Sebum.
It's close. Sebum has some ceramides in it, and it has a few other ingredients. It's close. It's the closest thing that we have, aside from, expensive skincare products that put basically the formula of sebum in their product, but it's pretty close.
Very interesting.
But sebum is also the problem that causes acne.
There you go.
So it's the product of our oil glands, and it's what feeds the natural bacteria, P. acnes, that live on our skin. So you don't necessarily want too much sebum on your skin if you're in that age group where you have acne or can get acne.
But it's fascinating because for some it probably promotes acne, but for others, they say that oilier skin is skin that tends to age better?
Yeah, it does because it's moisturized. Because it's moisturized, the dry skin tends to show the cracks more. Whether it's truly a biologic difference or an appearance, I don't know yet. And I think it's the latter. It looks healthier. Dry skin just looks, more cracked and older, but it's not necessarily biologically younger or older. But you're right. Oily skin tends to look younger in the long run. And that's when you tend to be out of that acne phase. But if you're in your teens, 20s, 30s, and you break out, then sebum is a problem.
How much water should we be drinking every day for healthier looking skin?
There is no correlation between water consumption and skin health.
None?
Unless you are chronically dehydrated or clinically dehydrated, in which there would be a whole host of signs in which you would be dehydrated. First is just an elevated heart rate. Second is skin turgor, where we pull on your skin, see how quickly it snaps back. But the amount of water you consume and what we call transepidermal water loss, the amount of water that leaves our skin as a natural evaporative process, is not correlated. Now, you want to drink water because that if you are paying attention to your hydration status, you're also probably paying attention to your nutrition status and doing things that your lifestyle would be conducive to skin health. But skin hydration and oral consumption aren't correlated.
Very interesting.
Crazy, huh? Which is why moisturizers are so effective in keeping your skin hydrated and looking good. Because if that was the case, we would tell every eczema kid to drink 9 glasses of water as opposed to 8, and their eczema would be moisturized. So.
Wow. Good to know.
Yeah.
Busting myths here.
Yeah, lots of
Teo, I love it.
Yeah.
Can we talk a little bit about hair loss?
Man.
Do you deal with that clinically?
We do. We see a lot of hair loss. I don't do any transplantation. That's a common thing in dermatology, but we see a lot of medical hair loss. Most common causes is what we call androgenetic or patterned hair loss. And that's for some reason in humans, unlike animals, some of our hair in a patterned region is sensitive to a hormone called dihydrotestosterone. So as our levels of testosterone go up, those hairs are sensitive to that and they shed. Now, there are other causes for hair loss. There are immune-mediated causes. There are external causes. There's scarring hair loss. There's non-scarring hair loss. The most common non-scarring hair loss that we see is called alopecia areata, which is an autoimmune type of non-scarring hair loss where it starts as circular patches and then it can involve the entire scalp or the entire body, where people lose all of their hair. That tends to be very distressing. And then there's rarer scarring forms of hair loss, like in the lupus family, or what we call another form is called frontal fibrosing alopecia. But the vast majority of people who seek medical care in the dermatology office tends to be patterned hair loss, androgenetic male or female pattern hair loss. Ways you can combat that. It's hard. Your genetics will dictate a lot of that. We do things or give things to help stimulate hair growth or help fight that hormone imbalance. To date, we do not have a way to grow new hair. Now, this is a misconception. People don't understand this. Everything that we have in medicine, every single tool, every drug, every prescription, every snake oil supplement that you see online is intended to reawaken dormant hair follicles. So if I took an older man who was bald and I just took a plug of their skin, if I look under the microscope, the hair follicles are there. They're not gone, unless you have a scarring type of hair loss, which we're not talking about. But they're regressed and they're asleep. So everything that we give is to reawaken them. There's a lot of stuff online. Rosemary oil, castor oil, etc. What people don't understand is the second your hair comes out of your head, it is not alive. The bulb of the hair follicle lives about 2.5 to 3 millimeters in the scalp or elsewhere on your body. So anything that you put on your hair or even on the surface of the scalp is not going to affect where the living hair stem cells are in the papilla. So either it is anything over the counter, either is making the hair look thicker because it's coating the lost cuticle, or it's attempting to be absorbed through the scalp in a concentration enough that will feed those stem cells, and it's very rare. The only over-the-counter medicine that works a little bit, and I say a little bit, is Rogaine, which is minoxidil as a brand name. And Rogaine was originally a pill. It was a blood pressure medication that was not a great blood pressure medication, but they found that people who took the pill, they were growing hair all over their body, like eyebrows, arms, back, chest, head. So they said, okay, why don't we make this a cream? Because we don't want necessarily chest hair to grow. Maybe you do, but we want to focus it. The problem with topicals is it requires you to put on enough of it on the scalp that it absorbs to an amount that your hair will sense it. So the efficacy for topical Rogaine is not great. Now, there's nothing else that's topical on the market that has the same clinical efficacy. You'll see a lot of snake oil stuff online, and hair is something very sensitive and personal to people. So there's the supplement or cosmeceutical world will prey on that vulnerability. They're like, oh, you got to use this rosemary oil and you'll get a full head of hair. It's bullshit. It doesn't work. But if you were to pick something that's topical, Rogaine's the way to go. Then we go into pills. So I tend to like oral minoxidil a lot more. It's made a resurgence back in medicine because we found, hey, it's a great drug. It's where topical Rogaine came from. It grows hair better than the topicals because the concentration that is circulating in your blood is a lot higher. It doesn't have the consequence or side effects that Propecia or Finasteride has, which we'll talk about in a second. And it's well tolerated. It's cheap. It's generic. It's been around for a long time. I like it. It's
safe.
Safe, very effective.
Makes you grow hair everywhere else, though, you said.
It does. So it won't make you grow new hair, but wherever your body has hair, that hair will thicken. So it's sometimes a problem in women who don't necessarily want to have, their sideburns grow or their arm hair grow. But for people who don't mind it, it's a lot more effective. Then we go into the category of drugs that have been around for a while called the 5-alpha reductase inhibitors, which are these group of drugs that block the conversion enzyme that takes our male hormone testosterone and converts it to a more potent form called dihydrotestosterone. So if you block that conversion, you will reduce dihydrotestosterone, your hair won't shed as much. The problem with that, especially in men and women, it's used off-label in women, but in men, especially of childbearing age, is the sexual side effects are a lot higher in real-world settings than the original package insert said. The original study said, 2 to 3% of men will have some sort of sexual side effect or dysfunction. It's either low libido, erectile dysfunction, what have you. In real-world settings, it's 50%. So a lot of men don't like that. And there's some question as to whether it definitely reduces sperm volume. There's question as to whether it affects quality or motility. So anybody who's of childbearing age, I tend to not like to give this as a first-line drug. In women, it's used off-label for hair loss because there is a theoretical increased risk for hormone-sensitive cancers because they have a very specific balance between estrogen, testosterone, dihydrotestosterone. So if you decrease the level of one, while the other one is unchanged, it looks like it's higher. Your body senses this to be higher, even though it isn't. So that plays a role in people who have a family history of breast cancer or endometrial. So I tend to shy away from that until they're out of childbearing age. Then we can have a discussion. So those drugs come in two forms: Finasteride, also known as Propecia, and then dutasteride, which is a lot more potent. It's called a suicide inhibitor, meaning it blocks the receptor and blocks it fully. They work great. They work to stop that hair loss, and about 30 to 50% of patients will develop new hairs as a result, but the side effect profile you got to weigh with your physician.
Wow.
Those are the drugs. Then there's things that you can do like platelet-rich plasma injections, hair transplant, low-level light, so LED red light. These are additional things that you can do. The only permanent thing is transplant. And that the way transplant works is we take hair from areas that don't have that receptor sensitivity and just move it and transplant it into areas that had shed hair.
What about ketoconazole shampoos? I've read studies that they can help topically reduce some of the DHT in the scalp. And I've personally used a ketoconazole shampoo for as long as I can remember, just because I thought it was like a very easy, low barrier way to just buy myself some insurance.
Yeah. So efficacy is very low, but risk is like essentially negligible. The ketoconazole does have some low anti-DHT properties. The amount that ketoconazole has to penetrate through your scalp to get to that hair follicle probably isn't really happening. And there was some confounding variables in the original studies. A lot of people that came in with some shedding had uncontrolled seborrheic dermatitis, which is medical grade dandruff, which ketoconazole treats. So as you treated their inflammatory flaking, their hair came back, and that's because they had not pattern hair loss, they had what's called shock loss or telogen effluvium. So when you corrected that, the hair was like, okay, we'll grow again. But easy, there's some efficacy to it, no real side effects. It's a generic, low cost prescription. Why not? And you can get the 1% over the counter. So if you use it, why not?
Have you ever seen post-finasteride syndrome? There's a lot of people are talking about it on X, like men who have gone on the drug, come off of it, and
a lot.
Crazy.
And young people. Now, we're going to go into a topic that's not necessarily my area of expertise from a medical standpoint, but my area of expertise is being a guy. As soon as you bring up the idea to a guy that there may be something that will affect your libido or your ability to have an erection, it gets in your head. And it's hard to tease out whether it's a problem of something that's in your head because you're thinking about it, or truly a medication problem.
Wow. So it's like a nocebo effect.
Yeah. And I guess the ultimate question is, why does it matter? Because if it's not working, it's not working. So who cares what the reason is? It's not working. But the reason I think it's important to know is sometimes you can counsel patients, say, hey, this may be in your head, or there could be a discussion in which you can reset that mentality. And as soon as people kind of forget about it, I've noticed that a lot of symptoms go away. But you can't not tell patients. Informed consent is fundamental. So you can't not tell them about the side effects. But I bet if you didn't, the amount of reported side effects would be a lot less.
So interesting. Yeah, it's people were talking about it recently on X.
It's been around. It's been around for a long time, and I have a lot of younger patients who that's the problem. In their 20s and 30s. There's a lot of online pharmacies which give out these drugs willy-nilly, and I tried ordering from one just to see what it's like. There's no discussion of side effects, no discussion about potentially having children, getting off of it if you're trying to conceive, et cetera. You just get the drug. So then now you got to spend time explaining to them, hey, this should have been discussed. These are the consequences, what have you. And it's young patients who are getting their medical care from online platforms. That tends to be a problem.
Damn. Yeah, it's common these days.
It is. It's very common. And I'm not saying don't use those platforms. Just you should know what you're getting yourself into.
Man, and the androgenetic alopecia, it's largely genetic. Is there any, I don't like to use the term natural in this context, but is there a, I've heard saw palmetto has come up.
So saw palmetto is it's like a low potency 5-alpha reductase inhibitor. There's a lot of that, pumpkin seed, rosemary. These are all natural food derived ways that you can reduce 5-alpha reductase and ways to stimulate hair growth. They're just not potent enough for most people to see a benefit. Now, if you start it, it may help slow down the progression. That's the whole goal. The other thing I think is important to know is anti-inflammatory diets. And ironically, people who work out a lot, like lift a lot of weights, do a lot of resistance training, will speed up the rate at which their hair may shed if it's defined by genetics, because you are increasing through natural mechanisms, usually natural mechanisms, you are increasing your testosterone levels. And everybody will convert to dihydrotestosterone. So if you have the genetic predisposition to convert and your hair will shed, the more you increase your testosterone, the faster that shedding will happen, which is why you see a lot of bodybuilders, for example, lose their hair really fast. You can tell when somebody's on a cycle of steroid when they start to thin out in areas they didn't thin out before. It's just because your testosterone goes up, you convert, and then your hair is sensitive to that. Now, some people are not. Naturally, genetically, they just are resistant to it. By your hair looks phenomenal. And by this time in your life, you will know if you're have the gene for it or not. You can land a Boeing on my forehead at this point. And, my dad has a head full of hair, but it's mostly from the mom's side. So I look at my mom's side, and that pattern hair loss is pretty prevalent. So in male pattern hair loss, the mom's side genetics predominate in your susceptibility.
Wow. And you never wanted to take finasteride or anything like that?
I'm not... it didn't bother me enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't bother me enough. And I think I'm on minoxidil, and that's helped. And my
Oral?
Yeah, oral. And my beard got a little thicker. My hair got a little thicker. My arm hair got a little thicker. But I like it. It works. I don't have any side effects with it. I've been on it for like 2 years.
And it doesn't come with the risk of sexual side effects like finasteride because it's
blood
not
pressure
hormonal.
medicine. Yeah, it's a blood pressure medicine.
Is there a potential pleiotropic benefit of taking it if it's a blood pressure medication? Because it's like these like tadalafil and they're all, I think they're really great drugs actually. Like I take low dose tadalafil pre-workout.
Yeah, it's a performance enhancer. Yeah, for sure. It vasodilates, so your muscles get more oxygenation. You get a better pump. There's a whole slew of things.
Yeah, and it also has like the side benefit, if you will, of like being good for blood flow and reducing blood pressure.
I don't know yet for minoxidil because the dose we give for hair is 1/10 the dose that we usually give for blood pressure. So I don't think there's enough oomph there. But surely, lowering blood pressure is not a bad idea. Usually the people that take this, though, are young and otherwise healthy adults, patients who tend to have blood pressure problems or they need to start caring for their blood pressure, their 40s, 50s, 60s, et cetera. The only thing that some people can experience when they first start it, if you're really sensitive to it, is you may feel some palpitations because it is a blood pressure medication. At very high doses, you can get some leg swelling, just like a lot of blood pressure medications in certain categories. But for the vast majority of people, it's very well tolerated.
What about guys who are on finasteride, dutasteride that don't have any negative side effects?
Great, stay on it. Yeah, no problem. I think if it's working for you, who am I to say otherwise? The only thing I tend to be conservative about is in people who want to start having children. And if you're having difficulty, they oftentimes forget to mention to their physicians or their OB-GYNs or their fertility doctors, like, hey, I'm on something for hair. Could this be a culprit? So I tend to be very cognizant of that. But if you're tolerating fine, stay on it.
Yeah, and semen analysis is okay.
Yeah. And eventually everybody will break through that drug. So I tend to keep things like my practice is like start them with the lowest amount of one medicine first because over years they'll break through that one. Then I can offer something else. If you offer all your cards at once or show all your cards at once, then as they progress through their hair loss journey, there's nothing else I can offer.
Makes sense. Teo Soleymani, you are the GOAT, my friend.
I don't know about that, man, but thank you.
I love it.
Thank you.
How can listeners connect with you on social media? I know that you're very prolific. It takes a strong stomach sometimes to follow you, I feel like, but it's worth it because I've learned so much. And you've got sun powder out. You've got your book, Skin Protocols. How can people pick up and support?
Appreciate that, man. Yeah, my wife and my family have muted me on social media, so I expect that. I have a small social media presence. It's just my name, last name, MD, so Teo Soleymani, MD. It's on Instagram. We have sun powder has its own handle called Drink Sun Powder, and you can find a lot of just general skin information on there. If you're interested in the e-version of this book, the hardcover is going to come out to the public soon, but the digital copy is available. You can just message us either on my social media or the Sun Powder page, and we'll send you a free copy. My practice is in Los Angeles. It's in Pasadena. And anybody who needs any help, just message me. I answer everybody's questions. Unsolicited medical advice is not what we do, but I'd be happy to give you my opinion. I try to reach everybody who messages me and just help out people with their skin or just generalized well-being, man.
I love it. I just know not to go into your stories if I'm eating.
Yes. I try to put a warning, but you know what happens when I put the warning is it's like people who can't stop. So they're like, oh, I see a warning. I got to click on it. So I've sometimes I've stopped putting a warning and it's just like, there's less traffic, but I'm fortunate and grateful to be able to do what I do.
But you're saving lives.
Appreciate that. Yeah. I thank you. I'm grateful to have a skill set to be able to do it. And we touch a lot of lives and a lot of people touch my life and it makes me a better person, better dad, better, human as a result of it. But I think we got to also take ourselves a little lightly. Social media can be a really good tool. You've pioneered that. I mean, there's nobody better than your example to change a lot of people's lives with just good content, good fundamental evidence-based content.
Thank you, brother. That means a lot.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course.
There's so much to talk about. We didn't even touch base on even just like the whole cosmetics and dermatology world, the aesthetic space, just even sunscreen. So maybe that's for another conversation. But
that's for round 3.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thank you guys for listening. Share this episode with friends and loved ones that you think may benefit from it. Follow Teo on social media. Just be warned that it does take a strong stomach to follow this man, but it's worth it because you'll learn a lot. And again, he is saving lives. Like you don't even know. Like, I
appreciate that.
You inspired me. I have a dermatologist appointment coming up
nice, man.
Next week to get just checked out because it's been 5 years since the last one.
I'll tell you this much: it's easier than getting a colonoscopy. It's just a skin check. Benefit is you may find something that shouldn't be there. Worst case scenario, you went in, it was 5 minutes, and you get a whole year's worth of clearance. So why not?
I will tell you, I think I shared this with you the last time you were on the show, but a mistake that I don't know if it's a mistake, but I went to my last dermatologist checkup because they're meant to check your entire body. I had the PA who came in to look me over was a really cute female. Yeah. And she was like, when the time came, she was like, do you want to remove your boxers? I was like, it's fine. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think it
was also cold in the room. I was like, this is maybe not the best.
This is not a representation.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't know. Clinic.
Ask for an older gentleman.
Yeah.
Or maybe don't. I don't know.
I don't know. But I'd probably be more. No, I wouldn't. You should not be shy. It's a controlled, medical, respected environment.
But I'm happy that they asked. Because that's a good thing, because they should be looking at every square inch of your skin, or at least offering to look at every square inch of your skin. And then just fundamental things I want every single person to know. I think this is core for anybody. The signs that you should see a dermatologist: a pimple or a bug bite or an ingrown hair that doesn't heal in a month. Inflammatory things, whether it's a mosquito bite or an acne pimple, should heal in a month. That if anything lasts longer than that, get it checked out. Anything that bleeds easily. So you wash your face and you notice a spot of blood on your nose. That is a cardinal sign of the most common skin cancer called basal cell carcinoma. And number 3, a new or changing mole. We can make moles up until around 35 to 40. That doesn't mean you get a carte blanche because Teo said I can make new moles. But if there is a changing mole or an evolving mole, I call it the ugly duckling sign. If something stands out, go get it checked out because it can save your life. Everybody can be affected. Bob Marley died of skin cancer. Khloe Kardashian's had skin cancer. Jimmy Carter famously was survived for 10 years with the immunotherapies for skin cancer that went to his brain. So it doesn't discriminate. It affects everybody from teens to hundreds, but it's also one of the most cured cancers in the world. So if you catch it early, easy peasy.
That's amazing. Yeah, and I'm prone to developing new moles.
Yeah, so you just keep an eye out.
Yeah, for sure. Love
Thanks,
it, brother.
man.
Yeah,
thank you very much, man.
Thank you, guys. Love you all. Peace. Hey, if you liked that video, you need to check out this one here, and I'll see you there.